some different insights is the Huffington Post South Africa Editor-in-Chief, Verahni Pillay. Verahni, good morning and thank you very much. First time I'm talking to you in your new role. Last time I spoke to you, you were in a weekly newspaper, Mail and Guardian. Now you're with the Huffington Post. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And good luck in the new role. I know you've been doing it for some time now. This story, I mean, for me has brought top of mind. I just want to know for you as a seasoned journalist, if it's something that has bothered you. It's about the quality of public service in South Africa, broadly speaking, because post-94, under the Nelson Mandela government, this government, the Democratic government, promoted Batho Pele philosophy. Batho Pele in public administration, putting people first. Therefore, that means you as a public servant, you are serving me as a person who comes to you for service. Now, this healthcare service, the most vulnerable people who are mentally ill have died in their hands. It's really undermined that philosophy. It's actually trampled upon it. Am I wrong to think like that?
You know, I think that's what a lot of South Africans are thinking right now, Dan. And as you say, what has happened to Batho Pele? What has happened to putting our people first? We thought that that's what this country was about. Now, we've been seeing signs for a long time that it's not so. That it's not so in our public service. We hear horror stories from our hospitals, from our schools. We see how people are being treated. But this is unprecedented. 94 deaths. And not out of nowhere. They were warned repeatedly, and this is where you're right that they're not listening to people, because they were warned repeatedly by civil society, by activists, legal action, families of the now dead patients. Why didn't they react? I
interviewed yesterday here on eNCA the former president of the Society of Psychiatrists of South Africa, Dr. Talatala, and he said before June 2015 the society wrote to the provincial government to warn them, because at the time there were rumors about mental patients being rushed out of Life Esidimeni centers, being moved to NGOs, and they said, no, it's just rumors. But they had evidence as psychiatrists. They wrote to them before June 2015, and you know what? There was no response from the government.
You know, and that went on and on. So if you go and look at the timeline of events from June, when that happened, almost every month after that there was some sort of action from either a civil society organization like Section 27, the Society of South Africa Group for Depressed People, all of these, SADC, that's it. All of these people wrote, including the family. The families marched. So many people were trying to get the department to change its mind. And you know what? It shut down. It shut down. It didn't listen to its own people. The Ombudsman, in his report, which makes for horrific reading, you know, you feel emotional when you read that report. The Ombudsman says in that report that there was a horrific climate of fear within the department itself. So they were not only listening to other people outside the department, including experts, they weren't listening to their own people.
So within the health department in the province, there was not a time taken to listen to advice, to say, let's do this thing differently. One wonders then, from a media perspective, I mean, you said, use the word emotional. We all get a little bit emotional. I read the report as well, and I'm just wondering, what's really going on here? But just taking the emotion out and you look at it from a coverage perspective as the media, are we doing justice to this story from that perspective? Are we covering everything? I mean, we do speak to families who've been affected. We had our colleague Sekelela Mding yesterday going to a funeral parlor in Soshanguve that we discovered was storing bodies without IDs in Soshanguve. Nobody knew, and he kept on asking this other funeral parlor to say, where do you take these bodies? Black and white bodies coming there. Nobody knew. Then later they made the link, more than 2 months later, made the link to say they are coming from Life Esidimeni, NGOs linked to Life Esidimeni mental patients. So you just see just the horror of it all. But are we doing justice to the story from a media perspective, or are we getting dragged into the emotions of it?
It's a very good question, Dan. And you know, what we want to do as the Huffington Post, and I'm sure all our other media colleagues are trying to do this as well, is hold the administration to account. There's now a replacement for Mahlangu, and we need to ask the new MEC what is happening. Here are the recommendations.
That's Dr. Gwen
Ramokgopa, you know, the previous, and saying what's going to happen now. How are you going to prevent this from happening? And also, I feel very strongly about this. You get rid of the head, Verahni Mahlangu. It was rot that went throughout the department. In fact, 2 of her top officials were fingered in this report. How are they fixing what is apparently systemic rot, right? It's not just one person. Now, one person can't allow this kind of thing to happen. There must be a systematic failure that is happening through the department and elsewhere. You spoke about PE. They were going to go ahead with the same thing in PE if Matsuledi did not intervene. The premier there was hard-headed. He was going to do it. So we need to, as I think media, start holding them to account and pushing for answers a lot more.
And thankfully, according to the Eastern Cape Herald newspaper this morning on the front page, it looks like Premier Maswale in the Eastern Cape has said, okay, fine, we'll extend the contract of Life Esidimeni. We'll leave those 240 patients in those 2 frail care centers in Port Elizabeth for another year while we sort things out. It looks like sense has prevailed there.
Well, it looks like Matuledi has prevailed, because I firmly believe if this hadn't happened, this 94 deaths, you know, they would have overlooked this and we might have seen another tragedy, because previously he was being very hard-headed about moving those patients.
Now, if Dr. Matuledi has prevailed and we look at this, there are a couple of lessons. You've mentioned that maybe there's a systemic rot in the system, that David Makura as a Premier in Gauteng has to look closer into the department and go deeper to sort out the problem, because part of resolving this is not just about the mental health care system, which needs to be sorted out, but maybe it's broader in terms of leadership listening to the voices that they may not understand or agree with in the beginning, that tells them, don't do it like this, let's do it like that.
Absolutely. Again, Verahni Pillay, right? So that is what Matuledi did in the beginning, right? When he became health minister, he was lauded for finally bringing in all those NGOs, TAC, all these experts that had been ignored. He started actually talking to them. What has happened that other departments are not doing that? That the Premier himself, Makura, who is actually a man who's quite known for doing this, for talking to people, for bringing people in. He said recently that he quite enjoys working with the DA people in Joburg. Like, he doesn't have a problem with it. So this is not a man who is kind of locked down, as you would imagine, does not talk to people who disagrees with. So what happened between Makura and his MEC? This is someone he manages, and that's something he must answer. He said he's not going to resign. You know, he said that, you know, he was not at fault. The report has not said that he's at fault, but he must ask himself, why did he not manage his MEC better? He knew that this was happening. There were marches happening. The media was reporting on it. There were a certain amount of deaths that had happened. Why did he not do more?
Very briefly, we just run out of time now. Can we expect more heads to roll as the aftermath of this Life Esidimeni tragedy beyond just the health space? Politically, do you think we should expect anything more out of this?
You know, it's hard to say. It doesn't seem like, quite sadly, that our president is taking this very seriously. We wrote an article about how he reacted on the same day when 3 gospel singers died, but our president is yet to release a statement personally mourning the death of 94 South African citizens. So it doesn't seem like there's much understanding at higher levels of how serious this is. But you know, there's a cabinet reshuffle coming up. We've all been reporting about it. We're all thinking there might be a cabinet reshuffle coming up. Matuledi was one of the ministers who stood up at that NEC meeting to challenge.
That was late last year. Yeah.
Late last year with Derek Hanekom, and we do believe there might be a target on his head. So unfortunately, he's a very good health minister. I wonder, this has not been reported, it's not verified, but I wonder if this might be used as an excuse to reshuffle him. I hope not.
Okay, well, to be fair to the president, there was a statement issued yesterday late on condolences to the families, and saying that he's asked the health minister to make sure that the recommendations of the health ombudsmen are implemented. So
I'm glad he did that, finally.
That's Huffington Post SA Editor-in-Chief Verahni Pillay.